Welcome back to the channel. How are you today? Welcome, crew, to our reading journal video, the first one in several months. For those of you wondering why that is because here in the summertime, here in the high Sonoran Desert, it is very uncomfortable to snuggle down into a chair to read. Very uncomfortable. And I was just too busy. I was busy working on other things, and we're just now getting back into a season, hopefully, where it is actually comfortable to sit down and read. And come to find out, there is a word for that. Book bear. I buy it. So we're not going to be setting anything up in the reading journal today. I'm just going to show you guys what I have set up previously, because I'm not going to be doing monthly spreads for this last quarter of the year. I'm actually going to be doing, I just did a quarterly setup, so to speak. And I've just got a list of books that I am looking forward to getting into. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you guys real quick. So we've got March. And I didn't read. You will notice that April is missing. I just have June, May and June. Back in June, I started a book called The Painted House by John Grisham. Normally, John Grisham is known for courtroom and lawyer dramas, so this book is a very different book from what he normally writes. It's about crop shares in the early 1950s near the Mississippi states, Mississippi River states. And there are a few things in it that will throw you off if you did not grow up near or a part of rural farming culture. I did. So there were a couple of things in this book that just did not surprise me at all, because some of that attitude, some of that way is still very present in a lot of very rural communities, in a lot of areas. And there's a reason why there's a phrase of the river does not yield secrets. There's also a very good reason as to why you do not eat river bottom catfish. And I'm just going to leave it at that. So I finished A Painted House actually in September, because I got an absolutely lovely idea from the lovely Joshua Curian about having a reading retreat day. Like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, I need to throw this at Dave, my husband. And I was like, hey, do you want to do a reading retreat day? Buy a bunch of snacks and just relax in the library and read whatever the fuck we want and just relax. And his instant response was, yes. Tell me what snacks I'm grabbing. We barely touched the snacks. We barely touched the snacks that we bought. It was hilarious. But I was able to sit down and finish reading it that day. And you'll notice I set up an August page. And we immediately go into a September page, because I didn't do any reading in August. I had no time. I was just exhausted. So I set up a couple of pages for September reading goals. Now, some of the books that are in here, I'm not going to go into detail over, because they are very pagan-oriented books. Because I got reminded, nonfiction books can go into your reading journal. And I have a tendency of favoring reading nonfiction a little bit more often than I do fiction. Just because the nonfiction books are more comfortable for me. So one of those books was called The House Witch by Erin Murphy Hiscock. Now, The House Witch, despite the fact that it's The House Witch, is written from a pretty non-denominational standpoint. There is a pagan viewpoint throughout it. But if you're looking for a book that talks about healing your relationship with the house or the apartment that you live in, so that you can start feeling like you're treating it like a home, a lot of what she talks about in this book can be very easily translated into a Jewish or a Christian or whatever religion, faith, spirituality viewpoint. It can be very easily translated into that viewpoint. Because just because it's an apartment or a place that you rent doesn't mean that you can't treat it like home. Okay? So you have to change where you live every other year or every year. That does not mean that you do not deserve to treat where you live like a home. You absolutely 100% deserve it. Okay? And for those of you who are my pagan friends, I gave this particular book a 5-star because I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Part of what I'm reading is the Sabbat series from Llewellyn. Not going to go into specifics about that. Decent little books. They've got a lot of information in them. And as reference materials, they are fantastic. And I only have Mabel and Samhain and Yule right now, but I will be getting the rest of the collection to put on my shelf. Another book that I'm going to be getting into is from John Grisham. Short little novella, and it's entitled Skipping Christmas. That is on my TBR list. My husband read it before I did, and he was like, you're going to enjoy this one. Another book that I'm working on right now in terms of reading is Prairie Fires. Now, you guys know I am a huge fan of the Little House on the Prairie book series. If you've been on the channel for any length of time, Laura was a childhood hero growing up. So and I always knew that the stories had been softened and gentled for the children audience. And I'm not even, I think, a full chapter into it, and there's already a lot of, because even though she gentled and softened a lot of what happened in the stories, you still have in a lot of the stories them almost being washed away in a flash flood as they're crossing the river in the covered wagon, almost dying of malaria, almost dying of starvation. You still have that in the books. Only when you're a little girl, you don't pick up on the subtleties of why it is so horrifying that Laura is the only person in the house who's able to get up and get water for almost 4 days straight. And she's only 8 or 9 at that point. And that if a neighbor had not passed by, the entire family would have been dead. Like, you don't pick up on that as a little girl. It's just, you don't get a sense of the time that's passed. But you do get it as an adult. So part of what I ended up doing was setting up for a quarterly. And then you've got my book list right here. A lot of these are pagan books. But a lot of them are also rereads. Like Little Women. It has been years since I have read Little Women, and Lord and Lady know there have been so many movies made with Little Women, and it's just like, I actually acted when I was a teenager in a play, two play versions of Little Women. I never got to be any of the girls. I was always more a secondary character, but I'm going to be trying to reread Robinson Crusoe. I read it as a little girl, and for me, there's going to be a theme. You guys are going to notice a theme of surviving against pretty bad odds, purely on wits and resourcefulness when it comes to a lot of the stories. I like, I wonder if that played a contributing factor as to why I'm a homesteader now. I admit to nothing. I'm going to be rereading several homesteading books that have been published by Jackie Clay through Backwoods Home Magazine. Miss Jackie is a amazing woman. Her spirit and her dedication to building the life that she wanted, even after losing her husband, is definitely something to be admired. And she's a modern day homesteader, like I am, although she's got several more decades of experience underneath of her belt than what I do. So I've got 3 of her books. My goal and plan is to add the physical copies of her books to the homestead library, hopefully here over the next year. As it is, I already own 3 of them on Kindle. And so I've got the books I hope to get to list right here. As you can see, it's got 2 pages. You can get back. And I've already started a couple of books. So let me show you guys real quick what my pages that I've got decorated look like so far right now. It's hard turning pages from this angle. I got. Here we go. And then I think I've got one more. Possibly more. Hold on. Rawr. There we go. And then I don't have any more pages decorated after that because I don't know how many pages each book's going to take. So I'm currently working on Prairie Fires. I'm currently working on a book called Tending Brigid's Flame. Not going to go into details on that one because paganism is not everybody's cup of tea. So some of the other books that are on my TBR that are nonfiction books are most people don't realize that cocktails were originally meant to be medicinal. And for those of you wondering, yes, I have had times where I've had a cold so bad, I have looked at my husband and gone, "You will please make me a double strength. You will make it double strength hot toddy." And in the wintertime when you are sick, a hot toddy, which is bourbon, lemon juice, honey, cinnamon, and hot water. 2 ounces of bourbon is a normal. A double would be 3.5 ounces, but you have to increase the honey and the lemon. Works as well as NyQuil, if not a little bit better. It also tastes better, just so that we're clear. But my husband found this at Goodwill for like $4 in the used book section. And I was like, yeah, give me that. That's going into my TBR. Because the history on bitters and various cocktails is actually pretty cool. So, and one of the most well-known is old fashions and hot toddies. So that one has a couple of stories in it. Now, I fully expect to actually get a little bit more reading done this winter because, don't get me wrong, I've got a lot of lovely books on my shelves, but a lot of them are also books that I'm not interested in reading. The library is more my husband's domain, although there are books that I have requested be added to it. But, ka-chow! Oop. I finally have a tablet. Yes, I said finally have. I'm 39 years old and I've got my first tablet. There have been other things that have been a much bigger priority, babies. Okay? So this is a Galaxy A9 11-inch tablet. I wanted the bigger screen because I wanted it specifically for watching YouTube videos when I didn't want to be tied to my computer, and so that I would have a bigger screen to read on. Reading on a little itty bitty phone screen is a little on the painful side. And I activated Kindle Unlimited, which right now, if you're a brand new account, they've got 3 months free. And then it's $12 a month after that. And there are a large number of titles that are available in Kindle Unlimited in categories of books that I want to read to see if I want them in my physical library. And it has been very, 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 very nice being able to just grab a couple of titles and start reading them. So I actually fully expect to be able to read a couple more books each month this winter than I might have previously been able to read. So, and why did I do a quarterly setup for my reading journal? Because I don't know how long each book is going to take me, and I am a mood reader, even though it's more comfortable to read in the wintertime because then I can get comfy and I can snuggle down. And another advantage to having the bigger reading screen is I now can have books on my tablet that I can read while I'm still crocheting or knitting. It makes reading so much easier and more pleasant because I like to keep my hands busy. So I fully expect to get a lot more reading done this winter when I want to crochet at the same time. Now, a lot of you probably are wondering, well, what about audiobooks? I don't like audiobooks. Do not get me wrong. Audiobooks are a wonderful medium for people who cannot get themselves to stare at a printed page. Audiobooks, for those of you who have a lot of long drives, are a wonderful resource. I cannot stand listening to audiobooks. I have a hard time listening to podcasts, and there are a lot of podcasts that I enjoy the content of, but I have to be in a very particular mood to go and listen to. And 99% of the time, I will not listen to them. I watch them. Among them being the Planner Pals podcast. I will watch Jordan Peterson's podcast if he's got a guest on that I'm very, very, very interested in listening to. And he's had a lot of those. I'll watch Sean Ryan. I'll watch Joe Rogan, depending on who his guest is. I'm very picky about the guests because I know that on Joe Rogan and Sean Ryan and Jordan Peterson, the conversation has a tendency of doing this. Which is probably why I enjoy those podcasts from time to time. I will go and listen to quite a few other podcasts because the guest and the topic are of interest to me. But I will have them going on YouTube because I cannot have just the voice going. I need the visual as well. So that's why I don't do audiobooks, guys. I'll do digital. I have tried a couple of serials. They publish chapters in sets on Amazon and a couple of the other reading things. Don't like those either. There's just not enough of the story available to be engaging enough for me to come back to it. And that's perfectly fine. One of the things that I feel that we have a problem with when it comes to the reading journal community is that they tend to get kind of cliquish. You're not a reader if you're not reading XYZ or have XYZ in your reading journal. Oh, bullshit. My reading journal has nonfiction books in it. It has my pagan books that I'm checking out in it. It has rereads of classics in it. And yes, the Iliad and the Odyssey are also on the docket, but those might be next year. I have physical copies of those. I don't have reading trackers of how many pages I've read. I have a started on and finished on underneath of my books. I have a list of books that have caught my interest that I want to read, but that does not make them a to be read. That does not mean I have to read them in any set of time. So what am I going to do in 2025? In 2025, I don't know if I'm going to set it up quarterly. We might go back to monthly, but that's why this last quarter here of 2024, I have it set up with just the 3 months. And then anything that I get read is just, I'm going to, write it down and talk about it and whatnot. But when it comes to my reading journal, I have made it as low stress, low pressure as possible. Because I don't know how many people I've seen that are doing reading journal content mention in the video that they're only doing the reading journal content because they feel like if they don't do it in a particular way, they're not officially a part of the community. Then you're doing the reading journal for the wrong reason. Do the reading journal because you love to read. Do it the way you want to do it, that makes you happy to pick up a book and then journal about it. If a book, I fully expect these two to cause this, causes you to want to put 5 and 6 pages of thoughts about the book in your reading journal, then do it. Your reading journal, like your bullet journal, should be a reflection of you and your needs, not keeping up with the there's nobody with 100 million subscribers who's a bullet journaler. There's a few out there who have multiple millions. There's quite a few people out there with thousands, and there might be a few people with a few 100,000. But your journals need to reflect you and what you need, and that includes your reading journal. And if your reading journal needs to reflect and this is to all of my friends who are reading books, all of the crew, every last one of you, I don't care if you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, pagan, whatnot. If you are reading books deliberately to enhance your spiritual journey, those can go in your reading journal too. And if you're reading them digitally, leave yourself a note of, I want this book physically in my hands. That's okay. Who says your reading journal has to be all of this fantasy, romance fantasy, shifter erotica? I'm not going to call it smut. You know why? Because that's not the right word. We use words properly on this channel, damn it. You know, if you're into erotica, great. Just be sure that you censor appropriate things, the explicit content, because you don't know who in your audience is under 18, and they don't need exposed to that by you. That's their parents' job, not yours. Now, if your goal is to read every single science fiction book there is out there, put it in your journal. And be honest with your ratings. If your goal is to read one book from each genre each year, which is still a lot of books, there's a lot of subgenres out there these days, do it. But your reading journal should reflect what you need, and that's what I'm doing with mine. Now, will I be posting a beginning of November and December update to what the reading journal looks like? Yeah, I will be. But my hope is that I will have a lot more books read by the time you guys see another one of these from me. And my hope is that by having the Kindle Unlimited, I'll be able to keep utilizing a reading journal all throughout the year, because the Kindle is just a much more pleasant format to be reading on when you're trying to get a lot of reading done. And when you're wanting to keep your hands busy because you're crocheting or knitting or doing embroidery or sewing. Although if you're doing embroidery and sewing, I could see an argument for the audiobooks. Not a strong enough argument for me to engage in an audiobook, but it is what it is. And there we go. That is what's going on with the reading journal so far. That's my plan, is just to have a quarterly page set up for it and books that have caught my interest. And I had started talking about what I'm going to do in 2025, kind of, sort of. So I am going to have 3 different spreads in 2025. Books that I do finish and books that have caught my interest. And then the third spread is not really going to be quite a spread as it is. It's going to be kind of a brain dump section where I talk about what I'm reading in the spring, what I read in summer, what I'm reading in the fall, and what I'm reading in the winter. And also reading retreat days. Like a plan for what we're going to snack on, what I'm going to read, and what days it was on. Because I'm going to try to have a reading retreat day at least once a season with my husband, because that was absolutely pleasant. That was a wonderful way to spend some time, just nearby time, because he and I didn't really talk all that much while we were reading because we were nose deep in a book, but it was still pleasant. Still extremely pleasant. Wore my PJs all day. It was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. So that's what's going on right now. And it is entirely possible that we are going to be moving in to a brand new reading journal at the beginning of this year. Which of my notebooks that's going to be, I don't know yet, because I'm not sure if I am. But I've already set aside a couple of notebooks over here for other notebooks that I use, and it's been a hectic year. And yeah, we're working on getting reading back into, I'm working on getting reading back into my life after reading absolutely nothing in April, May, June, July, and August. Whew. So it is what it is. And if another thing, dearies, if you have to take a break from reading for a couple months, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because life is busy, and the universe likes to change direction at Mach 9. And when that happens, you've got two choices. You can go along with it, or you can get broken in half as the universe drags you along. Sometimes you don't get a choice between the two, and both happen. So you do the best that you can. And there are a large number of people out there that are having to rebuild their lives right now. After Hurricane Helene has come through, and now we've got Hurricane Milton getting ready to smack another part of the United States. Piece of advice to all of you who want to help out and donate things: double check to make sure that who you're donating to is reputable, and that 90 to 100% of what you're donating is actually going to those who are in need. Okay? There are multiple charity checker sites out there. And you'll find it. Okay? All right, babies. My crew. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. Hug your loved ones tight. Take care of yourself. And I'll see you in the next video. Whatever it ends up being. It might be a homestead vlog. It might be stationery spreads. It might be my bullet journal video for November. I don't know at this point. We are just going with the flow as best we can. Bye for now.